So we saw how powerful in the last election, how powerful the black but also the Latino vote that was so powerful this year, and people have to start respecting that. And we bringing in a special guest tonight to talk more about that and some of the things she has done when she used to work in politics. So, Jamie, bringing our first guest, my sister, who I love dearly, Miss Annie Minguez Garcia.
Hey, Annie, how you doing?
What up,
I'm
Annie?
good.
Hold on. How you doing,
Glad
sister?
to be with all of you today.
I know.
Great to have you.
So, Annie, I know who you are and everything like that, but can you tell people a little bit about your background, where you came from, and when I talk about politics?
Yeah, so let me just start off with saying, like, I was born and raised in Washington Heights here in New York City.
Yeah.
My parents are from the DR, Dominican Republic, in the house. I currently live in the BX, so shout out to from the Bronx. What's funny is that I started my career working in a factory at 12 years old, and that spun off to working at SYP, Summer Youth Employment Program, when I was 14, my first legal job, to going away to college and making a decision to move to Washington, thankfully, because my cousin was like, you should come over here, come to DC. I worked under President Clinton at the Department of Labor under the first African-American Secretary of Labor, Alexis Herman. And then from there, I went to work with one of the most powerful Black legislators in the country, Charlie Rangel, Gang of Four from Harlem. And then from there, I did some lobbying with the first Black elected official to receive a statewide nomination, Alan Wheat. And then from there, called back to duty, went back to work for Charlie Rangel in the most powerful committee in Congress, which was the Ways and Means Committee. And it's more powerful because they make it rain.
Make it rain.
They make it rain. So I did that. So like in total, I lived in Washington for 13 years and really like understood politics from having been not only in an agency, but also then working in Congress and then lobbying Congress and advocating for Congress. And now I really use that knowledge, that politicking and negotiations that we had to do when we were in Congress to work at a nonprofit doing government relations.
Can I ask this question, Andy? We're always concerned about young people getting involved in the process, and we do see it now. But what do you say to that group of young people who really feel that there's no place for them in politics, that they feel like the deck is stacked against them? How do you kind of galvanize them and inspire them to actually, join this process and become a part of it, that there is room for them?
Yeah, I think, Kelvin, because I was listening to you earlier, right? And like the reality is that we are facing in our communities a lot of different issues. Right. And I think that it's easier to think about the speed bump that you need on your street, the community center that you need in your community, the business that needs to go because is not doing anything good. It's easier to do those things, but I don't think people realize you have so much power. Individuals have so much power. So when they're politicking that stuff, just take it to another level, and you have no idea like how powerful it is that when I worked in Congress, there were only 2% of Black, Latino, Asian, Native Americans, 2%, 435 House of Representatives, and only 2% of them were people of color. And when you think about that, it wasn't easy, but I come from New York, so we shake it off, and I just think like we're navigating things in our communities. You take it up another notch. We need everybody. And honestly, young people are leading us right now. I know I look young, but young people are leading us right now. And I think like we have to figure out a way to like get them engaged, but also to listen to them, because at this point, they're the ones leading.
Good point. Thank you.
It seems like so many people are just sort of, and maybe my generation even, it seems like we're almost checking out, you know what I mean? Politically, you know what I mean? It's almost like, okay, well, what's the point? Maybe we're looking for alternative ways. I hear so much just on social media talking about, oh, well, you're voting for this part or you're voting for that. It doesn't matter where you're voting. They both the same person and all of that. Can you speak a little bit about that? Why should I, as a 51-year-old brother who's seen it all, done all, marched, did what I thought I could do on my own, why should I be so engaged right now, politically in terms of, the system, so to speak,
Yeah, I think what's important to say is that we're seeing change right now in our communities and in our country because we as collectively Latinos, 32 million, and Black people, 30 million, came out in this election and said no more. We care about us. We're not a monolithic group, right? Because like if you're Dominican from Washington Heights, it's different from being Dominican from the Bronx or maybe from like North Carolina. We being Black from the South is different from being Black in urban areas, right? Like, so I think that first of all, we need to acknowledge that when we as a collective, Latinos and Black people and Native American people and Asian people say like we're a block to deal with, it is so important because we saw what was happening in our country as a result of us not doing that. And look, this country was developed on a divide and conquer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so even when we talk about the Latino vote, and I have to bring in Eva Longoria, right? Like she got knocked out the moment somebody asked her like about the voting and who made it possible. Let's just be realistic. There are states that have heavy Latino presence, right? There's states that have heavy Black presence. But if it wouldn't have been for Congressman James Clyburn of South Carolina saying, I am going to support Joe Biden, we would not have Joe Biden. If it wasn't for Black women, we wouldn't have Joe Biden. And if it wasn't for Latina women, we wouldn't have Joe Biden. But we needed that combination, not one or the other. So my whole thing to you, Derek, is like, we need to continue to stay engaged the same way that our ancestors and people that came before us were like, we're not going to give up just because we're older. I mean, we're here because of them. We stand on their shoulders. But that's the thing. We can't just stand on their shoulders. Now we got to be the shoulders. And we got to make sure that we're listening to young people as they're coming up too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Annie, you was talking about two. Oh, sorry about that. Hear me?
You're echoing.
No.
Annie, I'll ask you a question, Annie. You know, I got teenage kids and stuff like that, and like, you know, sometimes I notice about all my kids, my son probably takes to politics more than any other of my other children. The thing is, like, what would you recommend about how to get young people more involved in understanding politics? What would you recommend?
Yeah, I think that, Rodney, one of the things to think about is that politics is not just the presidential. Politics is not
correct.
just congressional, right? Like we have in our own communities, community boards that are super powerful. Depending on where you are, you have a tenant association, a block association. You have communities that come together and that they go to the precincts and they're creating community councils, right? So we have to figure out, like, we need to be infiltrating at all levels. Because look, I worked in Congress, and when you get to that point, you are making laws for the land, for a land that you cannot like say like, well, let's do it this way so that it meets everybody, right? Like it's just gonna have to be a blanket, like this is the law, and then you all states, like when I hear people say like states have so much power, yes, they do, but localities have even more power.
More power, yep.
Could be getting involved in, like here in New York City, I think about like all of the changes that we've seen around even like after school. And honestly, it was little kids that were saying we need after school. It wasn't the adults, it was the little kids saying that.
Yeah.
So my whole thing is like, we got to figure out like, how do we impact at the local level? There's so much need for our voices because all politics is local. So not to think about like, you know, I need to go work for a congressman right now. You could go work for your local elected official. You could go work for the district manager, the district leader. You could go work for the community board. There's just so many opportunities. And now, honestly, in Congress, you could actually get paid to work in Congress. When I was there many years ago, you got to work for free and the salaries were less than $30,000. So
Wow.
I want you to know The squad has made a difference. And again, big up to coalition building. And the squad has really done it. They got a bill passed, and now everybody got to pay. So the internships are a little bit more accessible, because that was the other thing. Like you would only see like kids that were the kids of like the lobbyists and the doctors and like the politicians. Now you get to see people that look like us, and honestly, like people that come from all over, and that's really important.
So Annie, real quick, I'm gonna ask one of the questions in the audience, but I have a question for you. Do you think it's a divide now, like you say, like Dominicans in Washington, Dominican Brown? Do you think it's a divide in the Latino community? Because we saw a lot of Cuban Latinos come out for Donald Trump in Florida. Do you think it's a divide? Is it by like, why do you think they gravitate more towards Trump than the rest of the brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I think that again, right? Like Latinos come from many races and many ethnicities, right? And so, unfortunately, when you think of the Latino community, and this is not like, I think this is something that even I've been exploring. It's that we don't vote the same way, right? We're coming from different countries. There's that nationality, the pride of nationality. We're coming with political beliefs from the countries that we're coming from, and then coming to this country, and sometimes voting for an individual that has, stricter stricter laws and regulations against the countries that we actually came from. And when you think about Florida, like, look, we were thinking like there's a much larger Puerto Rican community that has come into Florida. But let's be real clear. Why are they coming into Florida? Because of Hurricane Maria. And there was like this flooding of like Puerto Ricans leaving the island. Like, come on, let's make sure that like people can return to the island. And that's a whole nother conversation you're gonna have to bring me back for. But when you look at like Cubans in Florida, remember that they are voting everything against the relationship. Too much relationship with Cuba to them is not what they want. But we got to also understand them, because they came to this country fleeing what they considered a communist regime, right? And then there's so much happening in Venezuela. So like, look, Latinos are Republicans, Democrats, independents, right? Like we got to understand we're now one voting block. So you'll see like Dominicans in Florida were voting Democrat, Puerto Ricans in Florida, Democrat. But then you saw all these other groups. And I think like that's the piece that, to me, I think politicians, but also we got to pay attention to. Because the thing is, like, you can't go out with the same message for all these people, because they're not going to hear it the same way. And it goes back to that piece of like, we also like right now are becoming the largest minority within the majority. And when that happens, right, we know that race is a social political construct. So now in the census, the evolution of the census, now as a Hispanic, I could check off Hispanic white, Hispanic non-white. And here's the thing, when we do that, when we don't protect that Black designation, because Hispanic is not a race, what we're doing is taking resources out of our community. So again, that coalition building needs to work.
And there's so many states doing so much work, basically trying to make it harder for voters to vote. What do we do to prepare? Here's a question. What do we do? How can we prepare for the primaries that are coming up? Because these voter rules are being changed. So how do we prepare for those?
Yeah, voting suppression hashtag. I just saw that come up on my screen. Like voter suppression is real, and let me tell you, voter suppression happens everywhere. Because I think that people think that it only happens in the South. It's happening in Kentucky. We saw it, the long lines, right? Like we saw that polls didn't open on time. So what I think that we need to do is that we need to start volunteering to be part of the people that are poll watchers, that are part of the people that are greeting you and bringing you in. We got to be paying attention. I mean, here in New York, I know that you may have seen like there was a lot of irregularities, even in New York. And we don't think about those things, but we have to start getting involved. And that starts like what Rodney said, like we need to get our young people that care about that, but also like they're telling us who to vote for, then we got to listen to them and say like, that's what we're going to do. So voter suppression is real. I mean, the whole entire system needs to be like redone. And I don't know that I'm going to see that in my lifetime, I've seen a Netflix film the other day on voter suppression. And honestly, like it feels like something so daunting. Our whole electoral, the way that we elect presidents is so daunting. But honestly, like there's still a power shift, right? Like our systems were created basically to benefit some and oppress others. And we are seeing that more and more. And I think that we as like individual citizens need to get more involved and pay attention to how it is that our elections are run so that we are not disenfranchised. No one should have to show their license in order to go vote. And unfortunately, that's still happening. And it's all a tactic to suppress voters. So
Candy, you're in New York. You're in New York as we are. And what I'd like to know is this, and I've been saying this, I think as far as the mayoral race in New York, we need someone that's going to come back and really revitalize the city after everything we've been through. And so I've been saying we need somebody creative. We need I know we've gone through a rash of borough presidents and things like that, and that's not to disparage any of them, but I think it's just crucial right now. And the current administration, a lot of people have not been, thought fondly of. So my question is, have you, and I'm not going to ask you who, but have you picked someone in your mind that you think would be great? And secondly, is that person you? Because I think you, Annie, are the next person that needs to be the leader of it. But is there somebody, and if it is you, I'm voting for you, but is there somebody that you have in your mind already? And without saying that person, what would you want that person to do?
So I want to make sure that people know there's a mayoral forum. There's 35 new council members that are coming new. So don't forget about that. So like when Derek said, like these primaries, let's pay attention, okay? Because there's going to be 35 new council members out of 51. So we need everybody paying attention. There's 44 candidates that are running for office right now at the mayor level. I have been watching mayoral candidacy forums one after the other. I want a candidate, honestly, who's going to be listening and who's going to be convening young people and really trying to help the young people, especially those young people that are between the ages of 16 and 24, especially those young people that are in foster care, who aged out of foster care, and we were advocating to allow them to come back in. Those young people who have been struggling to get their high school diplomas and now are like, we're abandoning them. The city has been so good with the little kids and with the families, but we have really failed and abandoned our young people between the ages of 16 and 24. And if someone has any information that I don't have, I want it, because I feel like we have just done, like we've really abandoned that population. The same approach that we have for the little kids cannot be the same that we need for our teenagers. Teenagers need something else. Young adults need something else. And we have just not been paying attention to them. So for me, I'm going to be looking for that. Who is convening? Who is talking to them? There's 44. I mean, I do government relations right now, so it wouldn't be politically correct for me to say who.
No, and we gotta get those checks, Andy. You and I gotta get we ain't saying nothing.
Yeah. Yep. I'm not trying to do a tech cruise right now. I'm not trying to do a tech cruise.
Fair enough. One thing, long as the next man come out, he don't parade his kids with afros. I'm all good for it. Any man that come out, don't parade his kids in front of the screen with afro. But Andy, listen, I want to thank you so much for coming on. People, I see Lisa, our girl Lisa saying Andy for mayor. I think Andy, if you don't be mayor, I think you should help somebody become mayor, because you're really dope. I love you. Sister. Anything you want to say to people before you leave, and how can they find you? Any handles that you're on?
Yes. So I'm on Twitter, Annie E. Minguez. So please follow me on Twitter. And I look forward to continuing to chop it up.
That's right. And Annie's going to get a podcast. I'm making her get a podcast.
She need one, for real.
And we'll come on your show.
We're going to come on you. You and Lisa going to have to get it done. I'm putting the pressure on y'all right now. So.
Well, you just said it publicly. Now we're going to have to do it.
I love you, sister. Thanks a lot for coming on. We'll chop it up.
Take care.